These top artists will change your life, change my life. Business. One of the questions that I get asked often that I'm the worst at answering is who my favorite artists are or what my biggest influences were. I don't know. I have a hard time with names. I like to blame it on my ADHD, but I don't know if that's actually the thing. So I decided I was gonna make a video where I share my favorite artists who were the biggest influence. I'm sure I'm gonna leave some out and I'll be upset about it. Hey, is this a hook? Is this how I hook the audience in for a view? Are we doing the, these artists will change your life? These top artists will change your life, change my life. Business. Let's get into it. We're gonna start back when I was a little baby boy. I had two favorite movies that I watched relentlessly, over and over again. One of them was Robin Hood, and the other one was Peter Pan. I don't know if I just had a thing for green hats with a little feather. I feel like these characters both really relate to me. If you think about it, Peter Pan is a kid that doesn't want to grow up. So he goes to Neverland so he doesn't have to be an adult. You could say that's me. I draw pictures for a living. Number two, Robin Hood steals from the rich to give to the poor. That's pretty rad. Tax the billionaires. How did we get here? Peter Pan, a lot of this amazing art was done by Mary Blair. Let's just look through some of these. Super graphic style, which, you know, as you'll see, that really resonated with me in my work today, but also, you know, throughout my influences. I mean, just look the colors. Her colors are amazing, and just the shapes, all this Alice in Wonderland stuff. Look at that Cheshire Cat taking its head off. I mean, just amazing. All of it. I love how there's just like some janky lines in the background, but then these like beautiful floral pattern in the front. I love that the castle's like slightly at an angle, like nothing's perfect. And that was something that, you know, will repeat itself again and again throughout my influences, is just this stuff that moves away from perfection. And look at that fun lettering. Look at the expressions. They're so simple. This is something that I love so much, where you can get such an expression with so few marks. And also the disregard for perspective and it's just doing whatever you want. I love that. I feel like Mary Blair is very punk rock, even though it was 20 to 30 years before punk rock. Next up is Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, which is sort of an obvious pick, but this book specifically came out early on, into right around the time The Simpsons first came out. And I got it at a school book fair at a weird Catholic school that I went to as a child. The fact that The Simpsons were very new at the time is the only reason why this was at that book fair, because if the sisters at the school knew about The Simpsons, this would be a sin. This book would be in hell. But it wasn't, and I found it, and I remember just like looking at it, because I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't know who The Simpsons were, but there was like this little Bart Simpson skull on that paper airplane, and just like, was so weird and different at the time. And I just remember looking through it, and it just was so weird and fun. And I remember just being like obsessed with like the pictures, like the simplicity, but I don't know. And then just like the weird little things, like everything about it, like it just felt weird and cool, and it made me feel weird and cool. It made me really happy, and I felt like I had something that I wasn't supposed to have. It even shows you how to make a flip book. This was just stuff that I was like, whoa, that is so cool. I think these are for the flip book, and there's a flip book of Itchy and Scratchy smashing. It's so good. Where's the Bart just having a snack and then choking? Well, like, I was always obsessed with drawing, and people would tell me I was good at drawing, but it was a little bit stressful for me, because I was like trying to like make it as good as it possibly could be. And then seeing stuff like this that, I don't know, was arguably like not technically good, it was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be fun and weird. And like, that's the kind of stuff that I enjoyed doing. And it gave me like a freedom to do that and explore that stuff. Somehow through Matt Granning, I discovered Linda Berry, who he states as one of his biggest influences, but they went to school together, share similar sense of humor and aesthetics. Look at the chaos of this and just the, the collage-y, just things all mixed together, random words mixed in, this thing saying spring chicken. There's just this like playful, whimsical, but like also a bit dark thing that really resonates with me. Look how fun this lettering is for the most memorable days of my childhood. And then you look up at these three images. One, she's getting her arm bit by a dog. And then they're like drawing over George Washington saying he's a vampire. The collage style where things are just mixed in. It just feels so improvised and has so much life and energy. And then just like the characters with like multiple eyes and just the weird proportions, and there's just so much fun stuff. It has this looseness that I aspire to, and I feel like the more that I draw, it's hard, I get further away from it. Look at that monster in the middle. If you don't know Linda Berry, check out her stuff. Actually, if you don't know any of the artists in this video, check them out, because there's good stuff in here. I should have written a script, right? I know. A little bit further into my childhood, I stumbled across the work of Mike Judge through Beavis and Butthead. And this just, it's a very stupid and silly show. Just the animation and the characters are just so janky and bad, but like in a good way.
Somebody's gonna die.
And I think this image and just the shapes of their heads, I remember just like looking at it and being like, this is so weird, but amazing. And I would just like try to draw it over and over again, trying to like match that sort of just weirdness. Like the proportions are, it's just wild, but they're so expressive and so funny and so memorable. And then just like the little lettering and those bursts. Also, Ren and Stimpy, huge influence. How do you say it? Crickfalusi? John Crickfalusi? It turns out he sucks. It's like, why do dudes have to be so just the worst?
I've had all I can stand from you!
I wish that this stuff wasn't tainted, but the weirdness and the craziness of this, that's still there. There were other people who did a lot of this work on the show too, so, I can enjoy it for them. The exaggeration and just like the eyes bugging out and just like the weird mixing of styles where they would do like a super zoom in on some like gross stuff. Super, super fun. Just like the expression on this, that big giant guy. Some of the weirdest, if you've never seen Ren and Stimpy cartoons, you need to look them up because they're some of the weirdest stuff that was on TV. And as a child watching Nickelodeon, I'm just watching this stuff and it's like, this is crazy. Loosely around this time is when the Green Day album Dookie came out, and this artwork was done by the artist Richie Butcher without the T. I don't know how to pronounce it. Should have found that out ahead of time. When did this come out? I think it came out in 94. I didn't have it on record at the time. I had it on cassette, so this was very tiny, but it sort of made it even more of like a fun little intimate thing where I was just like looking at all the different things in here. And, I'm sure this played a big part in the way that I work and like just putting tons of little stuff in there. I often attribute it to the fact that I would feel overwhelmed and not know what to draw. So if I drew something small and then did a bunch of things, it would take the pressure off of it. And that is absolutely part of it. But I also saw stuff like this, which is probably, what pushed me into that direction as well. Just little stuff like this. The Goodyear blimp saying bad year. Perfect. My obsession with all that earlier stuff just made me obsessed with being some sort of artist, and I went to art school. And in art school, I was exposed to so much stuff that I didn't even know about that was also super rad. Things like Keith Haring, which is, a very obvious, well-known artist, but as a kid growing up in a small town, I wasn't really exposed to that much stuff. So I didn't know about Keith Haring. And, his work is amazing. Super simple graphic, lettering stuff, like obviously a clear inspiration to me. When I went to art school, I had in my head that I wanted to be a graphic designer because I found out that was the job for the person who made album covers, like music record stuff. So I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. And in my design education, I came across some amazing designers that were a big influence, like Milton Glaser. I mean, look at that lettering. It's from the 60s. Just super fun work. The colors, like that blue in the sky, that's pretty much the blue I use in all of my work. I use that quite a bit. I also discovered Paul Rand and just this like super simple, clean graphic style, almost like cut paper. I was always drawn to things that were able to minimize the image as much as possible while still expressing quite a bit. I just found that balance really satisfying and fun. And then, Saul Bass, obvious inspiration for me, the lettering and just the graphic images and how they like work together, type and image together as one. I could just show a whole bunch of Saul Bass stuff. An incredible archive of incredible work. I think it was a little bit after I graduated from art school, I really got into looking at like gig posters, and it was sort of like a big revival for that kind of thing at the time. And there was all kinds of blogs on the internet that featured that stuff. I think there was a website called gigposters.com where you could just go and look at that stuff. Maybe that still exists. But if it does, I think I'm gonna go look at it after this, because that was a great site. And I would just look for inspiration on there. There's also sort of like this big push for like lowbrow art and, stuff that I'd always been drawn to, but like it was sort of like a mix of lowbrow and then like more kind of naive stuff. I don't want to pigeonhole what I'm talking about into that, because I don't think that's the case, but there was a lot of this stuff that was very clearly handmade and like loose and just not, you know what I'm saying? It was just sort of like pushing against really hard, refined, structured, realistic stuff. It was the opposite, and it was refreshing and fun and cool. And it doesn't seem like it's something totally different in this video, because that's the stuff I've always been drawn to. So the earlier stuff has vibes for that as well. But one of the artists that resonated the most with me was Jesse Ledoux. This is a super rad Death Cab for Cutie poster that he did. I always loved his mix of lettering with the illustrations and just how abstract they kind of got. His characters and just the simplicity of the layouts and like the use of compositionally, like the background is that framed in thing, but then like the foreground is just sort of has no edges to it. And like that little cat character, just the expressions and the exaggerations, so much fun. Look at all this stuff fitting together perfectly. That kind of putting things together like a puzzle, something that that I love to do. He does it great in a way that doesn't seem forced. The mix of those like solid color shapes with like the line work on top, so good. Look how good this circle flows together, but like nothing in it seems forced. It's just that mix of very loose and playful, but just like perfect circle structure. It's so satisfying. And also that very minimal use of color too. Love that. Look at those eyes. Look at the type mixing with the lettering. I don't know. Listen, Jesse Ledoux is very good. He's very good. Let's just take in the colors on this one. People ask me about colors often, and I guess I have sort of distinct use of color, but I gotta say, I'm winging it a lot, and I'm envious of other people's color choices when I see them. And Jesse Ledoux is one of those people whose color I adore. Another artist that I discovered at that time, I was a big fan of, still a big fan of, Nate Williams. This was one of his books. Just lots of really fun lettering work and just abstract stuff. I really loved the layering of colors, or I still love the layering of colors that he does, and that printmaking look, just the simplicity and decorative folk arty nature, the textures, characters and the lines, and just great stuff. Also, like the thing, like the instant gratification is taking forever, that is very real to me. And it's also, seeing that kind of stuff in art that was just sort of like a little bit silly, but just, I don't know, that kind of not taking it too seriously and not being too precious about the idea of art, and art being just has to be very serious. That's something that's always really resonated with me. Look at these colors. Progress, not perfection. Amen, brother. Amen. Another artist who clearly inspired me more than I realized at this time was John Bergman. I did so many drawings where I would just like scribble abstract things and like fill them in with different things that I saw. And it is something that I did as a child, and I don't know, for some reason I found it really fun, but I never really pushed it as far as letting myself do some like abstraction. I'd always just like draw what was actually there. And I think seeing John Bergman's work where it became more abstract, but like mixed with actual things, it's just, there's an energy to it, and it's, I don't know, I love it a lot. Clearly big influence. And these like characters, like all these little characters, they're all so different, but they're all so simple. And it's, again, one of those things that I've struggled with over the years, trying to keep myself loose and not refining to the max. It is also too easy to not take things too far. And there's like a balance in trying to find that. And John Bergman nails that balance. Some are just like wildly abstract, but then, then he's just got these characters. But even the characters are abstract and simple, and, sometimes they have arms, sometimes they don't have arms. Everything in here is perfect. Also, let's talk about that soccer ball. That, I feel like I can imagine, it's so bad, but so perfect. It's like one of those things, like for me, if I'd go draw a soccer ball, I'd be like, oh, I know what it looks like. And there's like that pattern. And then I'd start drawing it, and I would end up with that. And I'd be like, oh, that's not what it is. And then I would go look at what it looks like and then redraw it. He was just like, nope, putting it in there. All right. Next up is Espo. Steve Powers. Goes by Espo. His name's Steve Powers. His work is very type-driven and just bright and colorful and just like weird little things put in there. And I just love his work so much. And just like the sort of playing with the kind of visual vernacular of like ads and old signs, and just like kind of putting that together and mixing it in a new way and new messages, and just also like the sculptural and like giant sculptural nature of this, and just feels like you're in a magical world taking this all in. It's like taking that feeling of just, being in like Times Square with just like overwhelming billboards everywhere for products, but then like making it weird, colorful stuff in a different way that's just amazing. Can't get enough of it. And just like mixing these super bright colors together, it's just so vibrant. I don't know, like just like the little decisions, like the pointing finger being in like yellow line overlaid on top of green. Through becoming a fan of his work and wanting to find out more, I came across a bunch of other artists. I think this was probably through the Beautiful Losers documentary and book, which if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it, because it is chock full of amazing artists, which I talk about some here. Bear McGee. Coloring and the patterns and the lettering and the weird faces and the giant murals, and just how and why is it so good. Look at all these like different faces and like the way they fit together and the expressions and just the line work. It is so good. Those like super thick outlines and like the tapering. And I remember seeing his show at the ICA in Boston, and like all these glass bottles with like the faces painted on them was so cool to see in person. Look at that ridiculous face. How do you even get to that point with that face? I remember years and years ago, I was doing some illustration work for Facebook, and they needed me to be on campus to do it because it was like for a new thing that they were launching. I don't even remember what it was, but I had to do all these little illustrations. But while I was there, in their headquarters, they had a giant Barry McGee installation, and I would walk by it every day going to where I was working, and that was super cool. All right, next up is Margaret Kilgallen. This is another artist that I discovered through The Beautiful Losers, and just I don't know. I can't think like this with the spaces and like the abstraction and the different angles, but it all just looks so good together. Yeah, I mean, just look at that. And like the colors too. Her work's amazing. And there's Jeff McFetridge. I believe that there's a documentary coming out soon, or a movie about him, or is out already. I don't know. I need to look into that. But anyway, his work is great. He did all of this artwork for the Virgin Suicides movie, and it's just all this like hand lettering stuff. And obviously that was super cool for me to see, and clearly very inspirational. I kind of forgot about this until when I was doing like research, pulling stuff together, I was like, oh yeah, I remember all those title graphics, because they were just like the names of the characters in the movie. He also does these amazing paintings that are just like, I don't know, go look them up. I can't tell you everything. You got to go look. It's great. And then the last artist I'm going to talk about is Mike Perry. I came across his work through his book Handjob, which is just this book that's all kinds of really cool hand lettering of different artists, and just amazing stuff. What? I'm recording? Oh yeah, sorry. I got distracted. Anyway, that's a great book. There's so much cool stuff in there. It's great. But Mike Perry, aside from that book, is, just done so much incredible work over the years. He's like an artist and painter, but also an illustrator and animator. One of my favorite things that he worked on was motion graphics, like title sequence for the show Broad City, which is such a good show. And I'm very jealous. I wish I got to do that. But yeah, his work, the colors, just one thing that I struggle with sometimes is getting my people in my illustrations to feel cohesive with everything else and also be somewhat representational. He did that with Abby and Alana in Broad City, and it feels so cohesive with his work, but still it's clearly them. Mike Perry, you're great. And just the super weird stuff. I love that. He's, always doing new stuff, experimenting, doing 3D stuff, moving stuff, spatial stuff. Just a big inspiration. Did you discover any new artists in this? If so, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear if I introduced you to someone new, because that's always a cool thing. I talked loosely about these artists in terms of like where I was in my career in life. And if you want to know more about that, I have a video where I walk through my full path from becoming interested in art to becoming a graphic designer and then accidentally becoming an illustrator, which has led to my 16+ year career as a freelance professional illustrator. And I've worked with clients like Nike, Google, Nickelodeon, McDonald's. I don't know, that doesn't matter. Listen, I've had a decent career as an illustrator. So if you want to hear about that journey, you can watch that video. Good talk? Yeah, it's gotta be a good talk, because like these were all great artists. So this, even if I didn't deliver in this, they did. So